Hello.
Hello,
Hello. Hi,
Hello, everybody.
Rosanna. Welcome.
Welcome. Today is the day. It is the 12th day of our 21-day couples challenge, and we are excited. We are fired up. It is a national holiday. It's Martin Luther King Day as well. It's
Yes.
Inauguration Day. So there's a lot of things going on today. But
Yeah.
what we want to do is we want to really get to why we got on here and why we've been getting on here. If you're seeing our face, Dwayne,
What's up,
what's
though?
going on? If you are seeing our faces again and you're saying, wow, these guys are coming on every single day. Well, we made a commitment to come on for 21 days straight.
Yes.
And the purpose of coming on 21 days straight is in honor of the book that we wrote, the 21-day couples challenge. And the reason we wrote this book is because right now in this world, there's so much negative habits. People have a lot of negative habits. They fall into a lot of things that the world tells them to do, and as a result, these form negative habits. So we wanted to do something that would infuse positive habits, particularly in a relationship, because we all know anything you do for 21 days or more becomes a habit,
Yes.
a new habit.
Yes.
So what if you could infuse good habits into your relationship? So we've been going for 12 days straight, giving you each word that we're asking you to infuse. If you have our book and you're following along with us, we hope that you took the word and tried to incorporate it into your day. If not, you can do that at a later time. But
yeah, I mean, everyone can kind of follow along at their own pace. Do this at your own pace. If 6 months from now you find that you're having some challenges in your marriage or even in your relationship with your family or whatever, just go through the book, go through each day and do what the word says. Follow it, exercise it, put it into action, and trust me, you will see a difference because we did that. Right. And as we have been bringing this to you guys, we've also been putting it into action. And believe it or not, when the challenges come, we're like, we can't be hypocrites.
That's right.
We better put this thing to work, put it in action.
That is right.
So yeah.
Well, before we get started, two things. We want to be good on the phone.
Okay.
That's number one. And number two, I wanted to introduce ourselves just in case you're getting on here for the first time and you're not sure who's talking to you. My name's Lou Humphreys.
And I'm Tracy Humphreys.
And we are
the Marriage Mechanics.
And we're excited.
Yes.
And let's get into it, babe. Let me just share the word for today. The word for today is sacrifice. Sacrifice. Now, that's a powerful word.
Yes, it is.
And it has so many different permutations, and I want to make sure that we do this justice, right?
Yes.
So, babe, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go ahead?
I like you to go first.
Okay. Well, the word sacrifice. Okay. So, in our opinion, sacrifice is one of the most powerful things you can do in your marriage, because essentially you're giving up something valuable for the betterment of your spouse. It's impossible to have a successful marriage without sacrifice. And the reason for it is that real love is sacrificial. A lot of times people confuse like with love. They confuse emotion or flesh or heat with love. Okay, because sacrificial love is when you are prioritizing the needs, the happiness, and well-being of your spouse or your loved one above your own. So a husband has a sacrificial love to his wife. A wife has a sacrificial love to her husband. A mother has a sacrificial love to her children. The father has a sacrificial love to his family. And I think when we put it in that context, we kind of understand how deep it is. Sacrifice is not a mild thing. It's not an easy word. And that's why Tracy and I are we believe very passionately that you should not take relationships lightly. A marriage is a serious thing. Let's take a look at some biblical examples so we can really put this into some context. Abraham, the Lord told Abraham to sacrifice his son. Now, Abraham waited a long time to have a son. And the Lord said, yeah, I want you to sacrifice him. And Abraham was willing to sacrifice his own son because he trusted God. And that's what God wanted to see. If Abraham was going to idolize fatherhood, or he was going to be willing to follow him. Ruth sacrificed for Naomi. Now, Naomi told Ruth, go ahead, girl, you young, go ahead, live your life, go do your thing. I'll just stay here and do my own thing. But Ruth was so honoring of what Naomi did for her that she said, no, I'm willing to lay down my future. I'm willing to lay down my prospects for a future husband or a better life, because I'm going to go where you go, eat what you eat, die when you die. And of course, we all know Ruth got blessed for doing so. And then, of course, the ultimate sacrifice is when Jesus Christ sacrificed himself to take on the weight of our sin, so that even though we are in sin right now, we can have salvation. And that, when I think about that, sometimes I'm like, wow, someone who's perfect, someone who just came to kind of show us the way, said, you know what, I'm going to literally take on the weight of everybody. And that's what, I don't want to start preaching about Christianity, but that's what's so special about Christianity. It's one of the few religions that allows redemption. And that's why
it is the only.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I'll say that. It's the only religion.
Hey, Vanessa.
Hey, Vanessa, Rosanna, hello. Kelsey, how are you?
Hey, Kelsey.
Well, but okay, so I wanted to share that because I wanted to just really push home the importance of sacrifice. And as a man, as when I decided, if you decide as a man you want to get married, you decide as a man you want to become a father, right? When you choose to do these things, because it's a choice, it's not something that should be coerced. This is something that you're doing voluntarily. You are saying, as a man, I have to be ready to sacrifice for my family, which means literally lay down your life. But the Bible says a man must be willing to sacrifice for his wife as Christ sacrificed for the church, right? And he literally laid his life down for the church, which is us. And I really want you to think about that sometimes, because that's the part about relationships that a lot of people have challenges with. The sacrificial part, the laying down your life, the submitting, the doing for others when it doesn't feel good. These things are sacrificial. And the interesting thing is this: when you get married, you are sacrificing the focus that you have on yourself. And this is something that I really want to talk about, because a lot of times when I'm listening to things online, or I'm hearing speakers, or I'm listening to podcasts or whatever, everyone that is talking is always like, well, what do you bring? And I need this, and you better do this. And I never hear, I am willing to sacrifice. I am willing to lay it on the line. This young lady that I have right next to me, I told her, and I don't know if she remembers this, but we were on an airplane one time, and we weren't married yet, but I was very head over heels in love with her at that moment. And I looked at her and I told her, I said, I will take a bullet for you. And I meant it. I meant it.
He did.
And I had never felt like that before. And this sacrificial behavior can't be just words. Sacrifice is like love. It's an action word. It has to be shown. It has to be demonstrated. You can say a lot of nice words, but how do you act when the rubber hits the road? How do you act when things get real? Are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to do the uncomfortable to make your spouse comfortable, to make your children comfortable?
Yeah.
That's what real sacrifice is about. So when you're looking at your spouse, when you're looking at your loved one, that's the mindset you have to think about. I'm going to sacrifice for this person, for the betterment of that person. Sacrifice also should be freely given.
Yes.
It should not be something that you feel pressured into doing. It shouldn't be something you feel obligated into doing, because nobody wants to feel like you're doing this because you feel like you have to, or you were forced to, or you made a promise to somebody. I mean, promises are fine, but sacrifice should be something that comes from your heart, that your soul, that you say, you know what, I am going to do this. And Tracy knows, I've said it thousands of times to her, and I'm going to say it to you guys on this line. Life, love, success is all about making a decision. Simple. You can tell me, you can say, you know what? I love her. And because my love for her is so strong, I wanted to get married to her. And that's why I married. And all those things are accurate and true. But in here, you have to make a decision. I'm going to marry you. And that's number one. The second thing is, not only am I going to marry you, I am making a decision that I'm going to commit myself to you for the rest of my life, for the rest of our lives. See, that's the part about sacrifice that doesn't sound butterflies and flowery. I'm going to commit to you that no matter what happens, sickness, health, richness, poorness, times are good, times are hard, I'm going to commit to you. Once again, this sacrifice is selfless. So this is why sometimes when I hear people saying all these, I need you to do this, and what are you doing for me, and this, and what do you bring to the table? All those things are second and tertiary. The main thing is, I am willing to, if two people are willing to sacrifice to each other, if two people are willing to meet the needs of each other, you will have a fantastic marriage. You should be so focused on your spouse's needs that you don't have to worry about your needs, because they'll be doing the same thing. If two people are focusing on each other's needs, you will have a joyous marriage. My wife, just even tonight, earlier, I was doing some exercise and I was a little sore, and I've been kind of just sore. I've been trying to work my way through it.
All those push-ups you're doing.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of. I think I overdid it.
A lot of push-ups.
I was overdoing it yesterday, and I was a little sore, and I was trying to navigate it. And then she's like, babe, do you just want me to rub your shoulders? Come, sit down. Let me rub your shoulders. And at first I was going to say, no, I'm good. But I really needed, my muscles were so tight. I really needed that shoulder rub. And ladies and gentlemen, if it wasn't for that massage that my wife gave me on my shoulders, I would not be smiling on this live here tonight. I'd probably have a lot more serious face because I would be in pain. And this is the reason why she didn't have to do that. She was busy. She was doing something. She was doing work. But she sacrificed her time because she saw I was in need. She sacrificed her wants for the needs and betterment of the relationship. And I'm not saying that just because she did it for me, but I'm just giving you that as a real world, an example of sacrifice. And I think we need to really stress this, because we live in a society that is very self-absorbed. I see it a lot where people, because of social media and because of the advent of the computer and of the social media, where you can say what you want, how you want, you can look and take 1,000 pictures of yourself. We become self-focused. And marriage is the exact opposite of self-focused. So if you're listening to my words right now and your desire is to be married, you're going to have to learn to die to your flesh. Remember, I said everything is a decision. The root word in decide, C-I-D-E, means death. Something has to die when you make a decision. So you are dying to yourself when you make a decision to be with, to marry someone else, or to be married to someone else. And I don't want to get too deep or anything like that.
No, I love it. Oh my goodness.
I just wanted to share that,
this
and then I'll
so
come back later
good
to the other stuff.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I'm look, keep talking. I'm listening. I'm here. I'm listening, babe.
Okay. I don't want to monopolize all the time,
no,
but
go ahead.
these are things that Tracy
so
and I we talk about. We talk about this stuff a lot. We practice this stuff a lot. And again, it wasn't always seamless. Thank you, Taj. I appreciate that. It wasn't always seamless. You know, we went through a lot of trial and error. We had selfish moments. I know I can speak for myself. I had selfish moments. And you grow, you mature, and you learn. Mm-hmm. And once you learn and you get counsel from other people who are wiser, or people who've been down the road that you're going down, it helps you feed and fortify your relationship a lot more. And you may be listening to this on the live and saying, okay, Lou, that makes sense, but how do I do it? How do I practice sacrifice? You know, there's a lot, like I mentioned before, sometimes people are narcissistic or they're selfish and they're not even aware of it. So I'm just going to give you maybe 4 things that you can do. Please write these down. These are 4 things that if you do this, you will be practicing sacrificial love to your partner. Number 1, be willing to compromise. Be willing to compromise. Now, I know compromise sometimes is tough because, once again, it doesn't feel good, right? You want to do what you want to do. Maybe you like, I don't know, Italian food, and your spouse likes Mexican. And you're going out to eat, and your spouse says, hey, babe, what do you want to eat? Now, you know, you want Italian, but your spouse loves Mexican. At that moment, you make a decision. You die to yourself and you say, you know what? Let's try some Mexican. And people think that it's pandering. People think that it's not being honest. But no, what you're doing is you're saying, you know what? I want to sow into my wife, to my spouse. I want to make her, I know this will make them happy. I know this is something that will cause the joy to come into my relationship. And you know what? Is it a big deal? No, it's just food, right? It may not be my favorite food, but guess what? I'll do it. Sometimes my wife likes rom-coms, romantic comedies. Not my favorite, but if she wants to watch it, or I know it brings her joy to watch it, hey, let's watch one. And I try my best to enjoy it and feel good. And sometimes I do. Sometimes they're great shows.
And you know what? Sometimes you end up getting teary-eyed.
Yeah, I get into it.
Sometimes we'll both be sitting here with the tissue, like,
well, I mean, I don't know about all the tissue, but I get into it. I get into it.
Yeah, and a few times you're like, "Wow, babe, that was really good.
That was great. I would have never thought this movie was so good." But this is an example of how you should be willing to compromise. You know, there's so many things. I just gave you easy examples, but sometimes they're more serious things, financial considerations, maybe children, maybe religion, maybe things that are really deep. And you have to look at yourself and say, hey, you know, I'm gonna meet this person halfway. I'm gonna compromise, and hopefully the other person does the same thing. Yeah. And that way you come to a nice middle ground, you come to an understanding, and your spouse knows my spouse is willing to sacrifice.
Yes.
So that's number 1. Number 2, write this down. Share responsibilities. Share responsibilities. Yeah. So when you have sacrificial love, You might say to yourself, you know what? I hate washing the dishes. But guess what? The dishes need to be washed. And if I see my spouse washing the dishes all the time, washing the clothes, or maybe doing something all the time, I say, you know what? Let me jump in and do it. And I'm doing it because the responsibility is not only hers. The responsibilities is for the betterment of our relationship. So I do it, or she does it. And that is the mindset that you want to have. You know what? We have a responsibility. Let's do it. Now, Tracy is much better at researching and finding things out on the computer and stuff like that. So I rely on her for a lot of that stuff. But guess what? Sometimes I need to do it. I need to go and find things online or deals or whatever, right? It takes time. Probably takes me a little bit more time than it does for her. But guess what? I still have the capability of doing it because now it's a shared responsibility. So that's number 2. Number 3, and we spoke about this before, but it's be selfless. Being selfless. Mm-hmm. Selfless is, I think, one of the most foundational things that you can have in a marriage, for sure, but even in any other relationship. Selfless, thinking about the other person, prioritizing the other person's needs and well-being. I mean, sometimes that in and of itself feels like a thankless job sometimes. Because sometimes you may say to yourself, you know what, man, I'm giving, and I'm not getting anything back, right? And that's your flesh. That's normal. It's a normal reaction. But sometimes you have to look at the bigger picture and ask yourself this question. How many times has the Lord given me grace? Right? The Lord kind of clearly tells you how to live your life.
Yeah.
And you know when you're doing what you shouldn't be doing, but you do it anyway, and then you ask for forgiveness. Or you say, you know, Lord, my bad. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done. I shouldn't have looked at that. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have thought that. I shouldn't have. All right. So the same way the Lord will continue to give you grace and mercy, you should do the same thing in your spouse. Yes. Right? Excuse me. Have a mindset of being selfless and saying, hey, it's not always about me. It's about we. It's not always about me. It's about we. So that's where selflessness comes in. The last one, and it's a pretty obvious one. You heard it all the time in all the marital books, relationship books, business books, whatever. Communication. Communicate. Communicate is the most powerful thing that you can really, excuse me, the most powerful thing that you can do is communicate. And here's why. We all have different communication styles. Sometimes some people are more direct, straight to the point. Other people are not so much. When Tracy and I first got married, that was one of the challenges that we had. Mm-hmm. Our communication styles were very different.
Very different.
And she had to get to learn me, and I had to get to learn her.
And I do want to interject for a moment, if that's okay. I want to say this. When we were dating, our communication was amazing. When I tell y'all amazing, we would sit for hours and we would talk about everything. And it was like, we just wanted more and more. We would just spend countless amounts of hours talking about everything. Y'all, then we said, I do. And things shifted. Because here's what I learned. When you're dating, that's one scenario. When you're dating, you're getting to know one another. The butterflies are there. The joy is there. The excitement is there. All of these things. It is wonderful. But then you walk down that aisle. That's exciting. That's wonderful. And then you move in together. And then you're seeing each other every day. those idiosyncratic behaviors are now more highlighted. You see more than you saw when you were dating one another. So that is where the danger zone comes in, because the moment you say I do, things are going to shift, because your relationship shifts when you say I do. It's a whole psychological shift now, because you realize this is permanent. And so sometimes that permanency scares some people.
Yeah.
And sometimes that permanency, it puts us in a place of almost feeling like you're mine now, I'm yours, you're mine. So it's like this whole psychological shift, and you have to work through that in the beginning of your marriage. And it's especially prevalent in the beginning. And then over time, if you're not careful about how you talk to one another, how you're approaching topics, how you're seeing one another. This is why prayer, you got to do this thing with the Lord in the center constantly. Because if he's not there, the enemy comes in. Satan will be having all kinds of ways in your marriage. And so it is imperative for us to be mindful, to always be respectful, honorable. Like you go into your marriage with these things, have a forgiving heart, right? When you feel like that the tensions are rising, you leave. We've been talking about this because this is a part of the sacrifice. The sacrifice is that you're not just going to say anything that comes to the top of your head. So, husbands, if your wife put on a few pounds and you see she put on a few pounds, you're not just going to say, man, you look at you got to get it together, or you say something that hurts her feelings. No, you want to say, you want to still compliment, you want to still pour in life, speak life, and you want to say things that's beautiful and accommodating to her. But also you want to encourage her. Hey, babe, I'm going to the gym today. You want to go with me? You want to start helping the person. The sacrifice is that you're helping the person, and you're not just saying whatever it is that comes at the top of your head, right?
I love it.
And so sacrificing your emotions very often. Just because you're married, it doesn't mean you can go off on your emotions because you feel it, because that happens to a lot of people. Because you're married, it's like, I'm going to say this and say whatever and curse and yell and get crazy. And you think, this is my spouse, they'll forgive me, or they'll let it go. There's that level. What's that word where the person is going to stay there and they're not going to go? It's man, y'all, it's on the top of
like,
oh man. All right.
You take them for granted, really.
Well, take it for granted. There's another word I'm looking for. It's all right. Okay. We'll keep it moving. But it's very easy to cross boundaries during that time. Very easy, right? And so being married, the sacrifice is that you have to keep the respect high. You have to keep the communication high, and you have to make sure that you're not taking your spouse for granted. You're not treating them any kind of way, because that's where the diminishing starts to happen. That's where the arguments become more frequent. That's where the person starts to think to themselves, how did I get myself into this situation? So you have to be very careful. Marriage doesn't mean, being married doesn't mean that it's always, the person is just going to always stay there and put up with craziness. because being in, in the line of work, I should say, ministry that we're in, we see it all the time. People walk away, they get tired, they get exhausted. You don't want to frustrate your spouse's grace.
That's right.
Dwayne says, even though you're married, you have to still remember your spouse is a child of God, yes, and has the Spirit of God in them, and you must treat them as such. Amen. Cannot become so familiar. Amen. And so that's the sacrifice, believe it or not, is that if you get too familiar, familiarity breeds contempt.
Yeah.
There's certain things about me that I have upheld from the time we got married until now. Like, I'm a person that's very private. Like, I know, and I'm gonna get real, y'all. Y'all ready? Y'all are all
let's
y'all.
Not get too real.
Hold on, y'all are all adults on here, but there's some people. And look, I'm not casting any aspersions on y'all that want to do this, but like when I go to the restroom, nobody comes in there. No one comes in there. That is my personal time. You have some spouses, one is on the toilet, one is brushing the teeth, I'm being real, y'all, because these things happen in marriage, right? But sometimes I believe when you have those little privacies and things like that, and certain things is just off limits, I think that it's a good thing. For me, at least, I think in our household, that's a good thing, because I remember when we first got married, I'd be in the bathroom and Lou would just come in and he'll just, and I'm like, no, we don't do that.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and I'm glad you're talking about this, because all right, and Tracy's giving you
but I think that, why I'm saying that, honestly, y'all, because those things breed familiarity. I think that you should, as a woman, I think there's certain things that are private. I just think you should have your space also. You should have some privacy about you. Right. So that's just me. Even look, we have 2 dogs. They will go in the bathroom when Lou is in there. He doesn't care. They even know when I walk through that door, if they even come to the bathroom, they turn around and go in the other direction. I'm just using that as an example where we have to be just mindful of these little things and uphold these little things. It might not seem, like much to some people, but you would be surprised, y'all, at the things that break marriages.
That's true.
You will be surprised.
That's true.
When you listen to people, you're like, you allowed this to break your marriage. But it's important to talk about it, and it's important to set those boundaries so that you don't have to bump into them later on. Set the boundaries. Boundaries are very good in marriage. You need them in your marriage. You need them in your friendships. You need boundaries with your children. You need boundaries with everybody in your life. If you can just do whatever, however, whenever, that's not good. And it especially goes for marriage.
I was talking to I was not really counseling, but a guy he called me the other day. He was going through some things in his relationship, and one of the things that he mentioned was he works long hours. I think I forget what he does, but he works long hours, and when he comes home, he's the better cook than his wife, right? But he's tired. He came home long, I think 12, 14-hour shift or whatever. He said, if his wife is up, I remember he said to me, he was like, could you at least make me something like a sandwich, something, right? And I don't think it's the fact that he can't make it himself, because like I said, he does the majority of the cooking. but it's more the thought. It's more the caring. It's more the recognition that he worked long hours and that he would like a meal, or he would be grateful for a meal at that time. And he said what hurt him is while he came home, there was nothing made. So he said, "Oh, I'll just go make something." And as he was making it, she came and watched him make it. And, you know, he didn't make a big deal of it. But here's what happens. A marriage is like a precious piece of porcelain. You know, a porcelain vase. And when you do those things, you just take a metal spoon and you tap that vase.
Chip it away.
Tap, tap, tap. And it chips away and it chips away. And if you keep tapping a vase, eventually it's going to crack and then it's going to break. And these are the things that he was feeling. He didn't verbalize it, but this is what he's feeling. So now, maybe 2-3 incidences down the line, he'll be at his limit. Or vice versa. Maybe a young lady, something's going on in your marriage. And again, you don't know how to quantify it, but you just have that feeling like I'm giving and I'm not receiving. This is the reason why we have to do two things. We have to check in with our spouse regularly, and we have to learn to do for our spouse regularly. Because, you know, like Tracy said, it could be easy to take someone for granted, especially if they have a skill set. You know, maybe your spouse is good at something particular, like maybe they're good at numbers or finances, or they're good at organizing, or whatever they're good at,
or cleaning,
or whatever it is. And you can be the person that's like, wow, that is awesome, man. I'm so grateful and happy that he or she does that. But after a while, you can kind of take it for granted. Man, I know they're going to take care of it. I don't got to worry about that. I know she got it. I know he got it, right? And that's the worst thing to do. You know, Tracy said on one of the other lives that when she cooks for me, I am genuinely thankful, and I thank her, and I hug her, I kiss her, I compliment her cooking, because I know not everybody has a wife that can cook, A, and B, not everybody got a wife that could cook as good as Tracy can cook. So I'm very grateful for it, and I make sure I express it to her, because I think it's important for her to know I don't take it for granted that you made this food for me. I remember when I was single. I remember what I used to eat when I was single, and and these are the ways, and I hope that she understands and feels my appreciation for her cooking for me. And this is, and
I do.
Thank you. And this is something that I'm sharing, because those small things can prevent a break in a relationship. And again, it's not just regulated to marriage. Family bonds, those things can get broken. Friendship bonds can get broken by people taking people for granted, being too familiar, not being appreciative. Sometimes when you have a good friend or a good child, let them know, you know what, I'm so thankful I have a son or a daughter like you. Oh man, I'm so proud of you. One of the things that I try my best to do with my nieces and my nephews is just tell them how proud I am. Not for anything in particular, but just that I like the direction where they're going. I think they're a good young man, a good young woman, and that I'm rooting for them. I'm in their corner. If nobody else is in your corner, I'm in your corner. And hopefully it's embedding something in it. I'm sacrificing my time. I'm sacrificing my wants and needs for them, because I want them to be affirmed. And this is how we have to, if we keep that sort of thinking, then guess what's going to happen? Our relationships are going to flourish. So I wanted to, I just want, I have a few things, but I want you to go.
I was laughing earlier because Vanessa said, Tracy, you are my sister for real. So yes, we're very similar in our thought process, how we do things. But Definitely. Kelsey said yes. Boundaries. Boundaries are very important. The word that I was looking for earlier is entitlement. Right.
Okay.
So being entitled.
Okay.
So sometimes when we just operate in our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and we don't think about it, we're not aware of how we're behaving, the things we're saying and doing. It's sort of an entitlement. And what tends to happen over time, like I said, it tears at the foundation of your marriage. And it can start over time to create resentment. Yes, Vanessa said it. These things create resentment, and then you start to see your marriage dwindle. And so when you sacrifice saying what you need to say, because we live in a very vocal society, and you should, if there's something that needs to be said, I'm not saying you don't say it. What I'm saying is how you say it matters.
Yeah.
You know, if every time you feel something, you just go off at the top of whatever is on the top of your head, you say it, and some things are insulting or it's rude or it's argumentative, again, you're tearing at the foundation of your marriage.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to sacrifice certain things like financially, right? When you come together as a couple, and let's say you want to, I don't know, you want to purchase a house, it's going to take sacrifice. You're going to need to save money. So guess what? The one that loves to shop, the one that loves to go out to eat, the one that loves to do all of these things, you're going to have to sacrifice those times. Maybe it'll take you a year or two of the two of you not going out and doing all of these things because you got to save your money. Or if you want to pay off debt, sacrifice those extracurricular activities, sacrifice going to certain parties. That year, you may have to sacrifice and forego your vacation. You love to do those things, but it's going to take sacrifice if you want to accomplish the greater goal.
Right.
And so again, sacrificing your time. You know, when you have children, another thing, you have children and those home responsibilities, you're not going to be able to do the same things you did when you were single. When you get married now, you can't just go out with your girlfriends on a whim or go traveling with your buddies like you did when you were single. Now you have to forego those things, sacrifice those things, because now, why? You have a family. Now you have children, you have responsibility, and that takes sacrifice. And you know, you want to, if you want to, whatever it is you want to do in your life, you know, for instance, we're in a new year. Many people started out this year, they're like, this is my year. I'm going to be financially free. I'm going to do this. I'm going to travel here. Guess what? Again, you have to make some sacrifices because you're not going to be able to do everything.
That's right.
So again, all of these things, when it comes to building your marriage, this is also why sitting down together and having regular check-ins. I love what my husband was saying. It's true. Every once in a while, how are you feeling? What's going on with you? What is there anything you need? Is there any way that do you feel like our marriage is okay? It's okay to ask your spouse that. Is there something that you feel is missing in our marriage? And you keep talking about these things. Keep the lines of communication open and let your spouse know that you are a safe space for them to come and share their thoughts, their feelings, and their emotions. And then if it's stuff that you really don't like, or it's something that you're feeling like, wow, I didn't think you felt that way, you know, you can still talk about it without it creating World War III, right? You can just definitely walk through these things, walk through your finances, come together and be real and transparent. Whenever we meet with couples, we tell them, if you got 5 cents and she got 10 cents, guess what? You rub it together, now you got 15 cents, right? And so you definitely want to go through your budget. How are we doing financially? Are you going to merge your bank accounts? Are you going to have separate bank accounts? See, these are sacrifices you have to make, and you have to, because over time you will learn each other's spending habits. You may not know exactly what it is up front, but you have to put boundaries there. Hey, you know what, Lou? If you want to make a purchase of $100, you don't need my approval. You can buy something for $100. I'm cool with that. But now, if you got to buy something for $200 or more, you need to call me and you need to let me know, hey, this is costing this much.
Stay right there. If what Tracy said just now offended you, you have to understand that the sacrifice that you have to make right now, if you desire to be in that sort of in a marital relationship,
a long-term marriage,
yes, is ego. Because when she said it, I heard the response immediately. Well, I gotta tell somebody what to do with my money. I'm a grown. When you have that mindset, you're not working in a team. You're not sacrificing for the team. There's a term in sports, sacrifice for the team, which means if she's the star player, she's scoring 20 points a game, but I have the ability to score 20 points a game also, but I can do something else. I'm going to sacrifice scoring my points so that the star player can score the 20 points and we can win. So sometimes we I'm sorry.
Hey, Dwayne
just said, can I just give my paycheck over?
You can.
Hey man, whatever works for you. Whatever works for y'all. That's funny. But that's what it is. Sometimes sacrifice takes place in a lot of different dimensions. It's not just even outside of marriage too, even in a corporate environment, even when you're working on a team, any sort of a situation where you're working as a team, you have to be willing to sacrifice, and your teammates have to be willing to sacrifice for the greater good. And that's
how you what you said about ego, because there's some people that they need to be heard. They want things their way, and you cannot be in a long-term marriage always wanting things your way.
Yeah, that's true.
You're going to have to sometimes step back and say, okay, yeah, that's fine. I'm good with that. Let's do it this way. When you're in your marriage, you want to test out how to do your finances in the sense of, maybe like Lou is really good in finances. He takes care of everything. He makes sure things are paid on time and things like that. But it's good sometimes, like throughout our almost 25 years of marriage, we have switched turns dealing with the finances, and you get to know who's best at what. And so it's good for each of you to, sit and talk about these things. If one makes more than the other, remember, it's no longer my money, your money. This is our money. It's no longer my kids, your kids. It's our children. Yeah. Now, if you came into the marriage with children, it's not just you're now going to be parenting them, and even stuff like that. It's a sacrifice, because now when you blend your family, that's a whole nother topic. But when you bring in a child into the marriage, you have to be in agreement even on how that child is going to be scolded, how you're going to deal with that child, because people don't think about these things. And what will happen is one day, maybe, you married someone and that person scolded your child in a way you didn't like, that can literally cause resentment and chip away at the foundation of your marriage. So you want to be very careful and talk about these things. That's a part of the sacrifice. Look, if both of you come to the conclusion, or one says, the one who has the child is like, I don't really want you hitting my child. I don't want you spanking my child. I don't want you raising your voice at my child. Guess what? You may have to make a sacrifice and come together and say, okay, that's fine. And even though you see that the child might be a little bad and you want to yell at them or whatever, you're going to have to draw it in a little bit, because if you cross that boundary, it's going to create a problem. Kelsey said, I find sacrificing rewarding while looking at the bigger picture. Yeah. You know, sacrifice is definitely rewarding because you're doing it for the greater good of your marriage. You're doing it so that you can have a healthy, long-lasting marriage. You know, we're very practical about these things because it's the everyday practical application that causes longevity. You know, we can get deep into stuff and go deep into the ocean. Some people, they want all this, they want to go out into 10,000 feet, but they can't swim out there. So we give people the practical, everyday application because that's what sustained us this far. If it wasn't for the practical stuff, Lou and Tracy would not be here.
That's a fact.
So applying, it's the application of the everyday stuff, the sacrifices you have to make. Lou, I love what you said, babe. You said, get rid of the selfishness. Marriage and selfishness, they don't go together.
They can't. I mean, if you're operating in that way, it's just a matter of time before it starts to dwindle. Maybe your respect for your partner starts to dwindle.
Yes.
Their tolerance for the behavior will start to break. And guess what happens? If a intervention isn't going to happen, it's going to break apart. We've seen it over and over and over and over again. You know, and here's the thing about sacrifice too. When a sacrifice takes a lot, it takes a lot out of a person to sacrifice something that makes them a little uncomfortable. And if you're truly invested, you honor that sacrifice. I think about Tracy back in the days when we were young and we were just starting. My car was, I mean, it was Hoopty would have been an upgrade. My car was struggling. I mean, no, forget about struggling. My car was dying.
Yeah, pretty much.
But I was, I was broker than the 10 Commandments, so I didn't have any extra funds to get another car. So I just poured every dollar that I had into fixing this car. But what I was doing, I was putting a Band-Aid on a wound, right? You ever have a wound, a gash that requires surgery, and you up here putting a Band-Aid on it? That's what I was doing because that's all that I could afford at that time.
Yeah.
This young lady right here took what savings she had and she took it out and she said, let's go get a car. And she bought us a nice used car. I was so shocked. I was so grateful. I was so like, oh my God, like, wow. Because she emptied her savings. And see, when people honor those sacrifices, now whatever she want, it's no problem. I got you. Because in my mind, I remember those times. You see, sometimes people take things for granted. We can even take our parents for granted. Right? A lot of times people say, oh, my parents traumatized me and they did this and they did that. And yeah, guess what? Your parents were young once and they were trying to figure it out. But my parents, they
made a lot of sacrifices.
They made a lot of sacrifices.
They did.
They made sure we had food, made sure we had clothing, shelter, safety, education. And, you know, I think back to that now that they're getting older, and I want to do things for them because of what they did for us when we were little. And, you know, sometimes when you look at it that way and you honor a person's sacrifice, it creates a feeling of trust. It creates a feeling of goodwill that will encourage and fortify the relationship. And that's why we're stressing this so much, because sacrifice isn't easy. You know, my dad told me when he came to this country, you know, he wasn't used to winter. He didn't know about what he came from the Caribbean.
Yeah.
So he told me that there was a winter that went by, and all he could afford to buy was a windbreaker. You know, one of them, and not one of them fancy North Face windbreakers. I'm talking about literally a light jacket, but it's got a hard shell on the outside and, like, you know, that satiny lining on the inside. And that's what he wore all winter. Now, talk about 0 degrees, 30 degrees, 20 degrees to a Caribbean dude. This is what he had, but he didn't even complain. I never heard. Well, I mean, I don't remember him complain. I was young, but he said that's all I could afford. I had to make sure, you know, you guys were fed. He was going to school. My mother was going to school. So he did that short-term sacrifice for a longer-term gain.
Yeah.
And that's the mindset, man.
Dwayne says sacrifice is a spiritual principle and a discipline we have to practice regularly. Yes. For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind, self-discipline.
Amen.
Amen. And you know what? I think about, I'll be honest with you. I think about sometimes the sacrifice that Jesus Christ has made for us as his sons and daughters.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, sometimes I have wept when, especially, of course, around resurrection time and certain times of the year, I really reflect on the level of sacrifice that Jesus Christ gave for us. And it's very humbling. And this is why I will sacrifice monthly to fast and pray. This is why we sacrifice to read our word. This is why we sacrifice to have our weekly prayer call where we come together and we share a word. And I sit on that call for 2 hours and people come on and they share their testimonies. We sacrifice our flesh constantly because we think about the ultimate sacrifice that Jesus Christ made for us. Very often, I'm a person who gives a lot of grace to people. Sometimes people will say, Tracy, you're too nice. Tracy, why do you let people do this? And I'm like, it's not that I don't see what people do. It's not that I'm not aware of what people are doing. I see everything. Not a lot escape me. You can talk to my husband. A lot of things don't escape me.
She's like a hawk.
But I realize that I need the same grace that God has given me is the same grace that I give to others. And so I see it sometimes. I see the offense. I see the behaviors and all of it. I see it, y'all. But I say, you know what, Lord? Maybe, just maybe one day, this person will open their eyes. I pray for people. And again, the reason why I am like this as a person is because I did some horrible things. I was practicing some demonic things that I had to be delivered from because I was totally ignorant. Went to a psychic and was burning sage and had a Buddha in my house and doing, this was years ago. I did things, it was out of total ignorance. But when I realized what I did and how it grieved the Lord, what I did. I wept bitterly. When I tell y'all I wept bitterly. And so when I look at how God has been good to me, this woman right here, how God did not take me out of my sin, out meaning what I meant to say, he didn't take me out in my sin.
Right.
How God was merciful to me. You know what I do? I'm like, it's okay. Now, I do put boundaries, and if I have to confront and talk and deal with things, I will do it. Don't get it twisted. I'm not a punk. But at the same time, I see things. I'm a highly discerning woman. I just have made a decision what it is that I'm going to give my attention to and what I'm going to allow to bother me. Because what bothers the average person just doesn't bother me. And I think maybe some of this has to do with my age, because I'm at a place in my life, I'm like, oh, please, I'm not even going to bother with that. And so I say this to say, very often I have even sacrificed my own feelings, because there have been times that I have been hurt and I have seen blatant disrespect, blatant dishonor, and things like that. But I will talk to my husband about it. And there's times that I want to just go in on a person, but then I sacrifice. When I think about what Christ went through, when I think about what the word of God says, and I say, you know what? I put it down and I leave it. So we're in that same vein. In your marriage, there'll be times you're going to be offended. There are going to be times you're going to be frustrated. There's going to be times when you may look at your spouse and be like, what was I thinking? I'm giving y'all real life stuff.
That's real.
But then there's also going to be times that you are going to thank God for the day that the two of you, your paths cross. There's the good, there's the good, and the not so good is always blended in. But the sacrifice is sometimes you're going to shut your mouth. The sacrifice is sometimes you're going to compromise and say, you know what? I'm going to put down my need for my spouse's need. And then there's going to be some times when your spouse is going to do the same for you.
Correct.
There's going to be times when you have to take turns being strong in the marriage.
That's true.
Marriage, sometimes it's very rare that you're both very strong at the same time. There's going to be times when you're going to be weak and your spouse keeps you up, and vice versa. That's the power of sacrifice in a marriage. And so we want to really talk about this because, I've seen people change their vows. Let me tell you about this. I've seen people change their vows to say something different. Oh, I'm not saying for richer or for poorer. It's for richer or richer. I'm not saying sickness. It's for health and for health. But let me tell you something. Life, whether you want to say it in front of each other, standing at that altar or not, the principle is going to play out in your life anyway. Right. So you might as well just say the vows the way that they're intended for you to say it. Because whether you change it or not, because I know a lot of people are in, it's a lot of manifestation and a lot of affirmation. Yes, those things you do those things because we pray over each other and speak life into each other. We do all of those things. But in the midst of it, life is still going to happen. Trust me when I tell you. So with all of that we shared with y'all tonight, we pray that this information was useful. We try to give y'all stuff, the real stuff. We don't want it. We feel responsible to be honest and real.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're coming from our perspective. Your relationship is going to be different,
Mm-hmm.
but there also will be similarities. So just make sure that when you get married, and I'm going to say this one more time, that you are willing to make sacrifices.
Mm-hmm. Look, sacrifices are very important, man. Like I said, it's the foundational thing to any relationship. And sometimes you can make a sacrifice. You can sacrifice your time, your money. Like, for example, I'm having a conference, Man Up Conference, February 8th and 9th. Maybe you can't make it, but you can sacrifice and purchase a ticket for a young person. Right? We have several people doing that. I have two of my friends, and they're buying tickets for a younger person to go, so a younger person doesn't have to pay their ticket; they could just get going. And I honor that, because that is something so powerful that we can all do by just sacrificing a little bit of our time. This conference, like I said, if it wasn't so important, you wouldn't hear me talk about it as much as I do. But this is something that I feel is going to enrich men. We need our men to be back in where they rightfully should be, leading our households, leading our families, doing good works for the kingdom. And I believe that those men are out there. But again, I never criticize or blame someone who has no knowledge. There's so many men right now who are struggling with their faith. They're struggling with where they fit in society. And we kind of want to help them out in that manner. And I think this is a start. I think this is a positive thing. Like I said, this has been on my heart for several years now. And I really want this to maybe become a consistent thing. But first things first, I want this event to be powerful. And if it is, and people are really getting fruit from it, then we can look into making it on further and further. So with that being said, guys, really look in the chat. I put our email, and I put the as well as our website. If you go to the website, go under events tab, and you'll see the Man Up Conference 2025. There's a QR code, scan it, and you can register and get there. If you need a hotel, we have a hotel link as well.
Mm-hmm.
But guys, do what you can do to get there. Sacrifice, if you have to sacrifice some of your time, maybe your weekend, because it's over a weekend. Sacrifice your weekend for the betterment of yourself, if you're a man.
And your family.
And your family.
Because
well.
I believe that every man that comes to this event is going to empower you, enrich you. You're going to be poured into, prayed over. I mean, who knows what Pastor Kevin Ewing is going to do? Who knows what, Minister Joel Ross is going to do, or Darnell, or my amazing and incredible husband, what the Lord will lead them to do in that room. But it's just going to be an amazing time. And I believe that men deserve that. Men, you deserve to be poured into, and that this is for you. This is for your future, for your family. And what a wonderful way to start out the year. To go to an event that is going to build you up and edify you and pour into you, so that it can strengthen you for the year ahead and the things that, God has impressed on your heart to do. And so you're going to have a bunch of men in the room that is going to encourage you and speak life into you. These men may even have resources to help you in your journey. I know my husband is always helping people find jobs over the years. He has now. I'm not going to say that he's going to find you a job, but but if the fit is right, he knows a lot of people.
There are people that are coming here who have connections, and I know a gentleman right now who just confirmed the other day. He works with the city, and he can help get people funding and jobs and things like that. So I'm excited to see what he has to offer and share. And it's going to be a networking thing. So please come out if you can. And I think it'll be worth your time and worth your family's time as well. So,
amen.
Babe, we are at our we're about finished, but what is the next word though? Do you know?
Well,
for tomorrow?
the
Or you want
next
me to
word for tomorrow is edify. One of my favorite words. One of my favorite words.
One of
You are
my
most
favorite,
welcome,
yeah.
Kelsey. You're welcome, Vanessa. Mwah,
Yes,
mwah,
yes.
mwah. You're welcome. It was so wonderful. Thank you guys for coming out. Thank you for supporting us. This encourages us. As we come on and you guys are interacting with us and you're sharing, we want to hear your voice. We want to hear your questions. We want to know what your thoughts are on the topic. We love when you guys join us. So thank you guys. God bless you for being on this journey with us. And we can't wait to see what the Lord is going to do at the end of this.
That's right. So tomorrow, edify is going to be the word. Think about how you can edify your spouse, your loved one, your children, your parents. Whom can you edify? And if you don't know what the word edify means, look it up in the dictionary.
Look it up.
This is 2025.
Google it.
Google is free. Edify, edify, edify.
Yes.
All right, guys.
All right, everyone. God bless you. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Take care, everyone. Be well.